Ladies and gents, PepperBelly here, and welcome to some EPSILON. This is a tactical shooter currently being developed by Sabre. It's in pre-alpha, and if you guys are aware, Sabre is also the guys who developed Takedown Red Sabre. I know what most of you are probably thinking right now. Takedown Red Sabre was an utter disaster of a release of a game, period. Probably one of the biggest disasters to ever grace Kickstarter, and a natural stigma around the fact that Sabre screwed that up. I voiced my opinion many times over the course of the year, ever since Takedown was released, how much I disliked the game, and how much I was kind of annoyed with the fact that games like Ground Branch and Interstellar Marines failed in their Kickstarters, but currently have functioning games. Their games are being developed right now, are way better than Takedown Red Sabre can ever hope to be, and their Kickstarters failed, but Takedown succeeded. This is one thing that's always annoyed me, kind of this whole context of the world isn't fair, life sucks, why is this a thing? But anyway, this video isn't about Takedown Red Sabre or Sabre's failings in the past, and in fact, Takedown Red Sabre's disastrous release and situation wasn't even entirely Sabre's fault. If you ever watched the post-mortem video that Christian Allen, the CEO and main developer of Takedown, released, you'll know that, in fact, they went through some serious hurdles and tried to do everything they can to salvage what they could of Takedown, and unfortunately it wasn't enough, and they did their best given the circumstances they were under, because there was a lot of problems. Investors just disappearing off the face of the earth and going to a different continent altogether, and funding being cut as a result, basically making their development progress hindered and struggling to get along. In fact, there was also other issues with developers themselves having personal issues or health issues that kind of put them out of commission, meaning that development was slowed down even further because they already had a small team as it was, and then losing members that are critical to the progression of development makes it all the worse. But again, whole other story. I'm just trying to say that developers like Sabre deserve a second chance, and this is their second chance. EPSILON. So here we are with the pre-alpha. It's currently 1.0.4.2, and I actually didn't even want to release this video today, or whenever I actually get this video out. It's kind of late at night. That I wanted to wait until Monday because they're coming out with 1.0.5, which is going to rectify a lot of the issues I'm going to bring up in this current build. So I'm not going to show too much. I'm going to keep this as short as I possibly can and just reveal a little bit about the game. And you can see the changelog is actually kind of extensive. They've done a lot of work as of late, ever since this was actually added to early access on Steam not too long ago. And the price is $8 currently, and it'll gradually increase over time until the game is fully released. I believe it'll be about $40, $39.99 USD, or your regional equivalent. So let's go ahead and jump in here. Here's the main menu. Now, one thing that I've always kind of been annoyed with Takedown Red Sabre was the menu. Like, I just thought it was kind of like unintuitive. It was very lazy looking. It didn't look appealing. Navigating it was kind of just, it seemed like such a subpar, very budget type of menu. And it seems to kind of have returned here. Like, it's not terrible, but it definitely could be better. I'm assuming that this will all be remedied and overhauled by the time the game is actually released, and it's being built on Unreal Engine 4, so there's obviously going to be a nice set of options here, which I was actually very impressed with this. So you got a really nice selection of audio options. The video is where I was particularly stunned with, really, because of one simple option, which I'll discuss in a second. So I'm playing in 1920 by 1080. Of course, all the options are epic, high, low, you know, what you expect from the current Unreal Engine 4 option settings. Of course, you got motion blur, VSync. VSync actually isn't that bad. I was kind of surprised. I was getting a lot of screen tearing because the frame rate's currently capped at 60. And the next update, it's not going to be capped at 60 anymore. You're actually going to be able to unlock that frame rate, which is critical, I think. Because usually for me, when I have higher frame rates, like above 70, then screen tearing essentially disappears. Not entirely, but it's less noticeable than it being around 60, the exact refresh rate of my current TV, which is what I play on through HDMI. So obviously VSync helps, and in fact VSync doesn't even include that much input lag. I rarely notice the input lag, which is really good in my opinion. But I think the biggest contender here for awesomeness is this resolution scale. This is something that Battlefield 4 introduced a while back. This is an important setting in my mind. This is a very, very critical setting because this allows you to adjust essentially what the rendering resolution is of the game, and it scales it to your monitors through super sampling. So say I'm playing in 720 by 10 or 1280 by 720p. All right, like let's say I'm down here. But I know for a fact, because that's my native resolution. In fact, that's actually my native resolution for this TV. So say I want to have the HUD being perfect, or depending on the game, and it's, you know, this is my native res, so it looks good, then I can up this by 50%. Like so, and then it would actually be rendering in 1080, but fitting it to my screen. And you'll notice it, like if I were to actually switch this to 1080 and play in 1080, or keep it at 720 and keep this at 150%, it looks exactly the same. The only thing that would be different would be the HUD, depending on the game, if the HUD doesn't actually scale properly based on your resolution. So for those of you that have lower resolution monitors, but you want to play in 1080, or play in a higher resolution, like let's say you're in 1080p already, and you want to play at 1440p, you just have to change this to 134%, or 133%, because it's like 144p is actually like right in between that. So basically all you're doing is taking the resolution that you have, so you'd be like 1080, and you just add the percentage, and whatever percentage, because this is in percent, so whatever the percentage is, like if you want 2K, like, or 4K, you would just put this all the way to 200, and it would look incredibly sharp, and really, really, really good. I mean, it's a really cool way, and in fact, people say that resolution scale usually impacts performance more so. That's only if you're playing at a resolution far greater than what you naturally would play at. If I was playing, you know, this was, again, at 720, and I put it to 150%, the frame rates are exactly the same because it's just rendering out in 1080. Like, there's no difference unless I go way above the resolution scale past your typical resolution. That's only when you'll start to see major performance hits. Anyway, moving on. The keybinds, this is the first iteration. It's an utter mess, and they are well aware of that. This is going to be completely changed out eventually in the future, hopefully for something a lot more intuitive. I would like tabs, maybe like having your keybinds for your keyboard and then having the controller settings separated so it's not all mixed up like this, because you can see it's like you got move forwards, backwards, move right, left, like it move up, move up, move up. Like there's like a billion repeats going on here, which is just very confusing and annoying. It's a pain in the ass to navigate, and I don't even bother with this just because it's so like, it's just an eyesore to look at. So I'm hoping at some point in the future this will be changed out, because it really needs to be, like, and they will. So, and of course you got your mouse sensitivity. One thing I've noticed though is even though like the X sensitivity, like horizontal and vertical, are both 15, I feel like the vertical for some reason actually lags behind. So sometimes I would actually have to increase this to like 20 or something just to kind of make it seem like it felt like a real 1-to-1 ratio on the mouse sensitivity. It could just be me, I'm not entirely sure, but it just seems like there's a faster horizontal, even though they're both 15, horizontal's faster than vertical. This could just be a perception thing, I'm not 100% on that, but it's really, really weird to me. So I've been fiddling around with it, but I haven't really come to a complete definitive conclusion of whether or not it's just like, again, a perception thing, or I'm actually correct in that it's not really true 1-to-1 ratio. So one of the biggest things that I'm really surprised about in this game would be the planning phase, which we'll get to in a second. But you can see right here, currently there's only one level in the game, which is Unipol HQ. And you got story mode and you got elimination. Elimination acts like terrorist hunt. Story mode is actually like story mode. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that, which is really cool because they have this comic strip style briefing. And you can actually pause it or skip it in the top right corner. So say like things are going too fast, you're like, oh crap, I want to read it. You can click pause and it'll stop and you can continue. So you can read everything that's happening. This is actually an interesting take on how you would do briefings instead of just sitting in the menu like SWAT 4 or most games where you just have a giant wall of text and either someone voice acts it or doesn't. It does it in an interesting comic book style. And the thing is, like, to me, this is kind of a lazy way of doing briefings, but it's also a unique way of doing briefings and telling a story through like this comic book style, which I think is actually really suits the game, because you'll notice when you actually get in game, the game is has a different artistic view and visual aspect to it. So it kind of has this cell shaded look to it and cartoony look, comic book look, but not over exaggerated. It looks kind of like, you'll see a lot of similarities to Takedown Red Sabre. but a general improvement on a lot of fronts. So I mean, I think it's really interesting. Like, I really like the idea of how they've done this. I think it looks good. It's unique, as I've said. And overall, I think it's a really, really good direction to go into compared to your traditional tactical shooter. Like, it's done differently, it's interesting, and the actual visual aspects of the game as well, although some people aren't, you know, particularly infatuated with it. Like, I actually think it's nice. Like, the visuals, the cel-shaded look to it. It's not overdone, but it's done enough that it actually looks, again, unique. So here's the planning phase. Probably the best thing I've seen added to a tactical shooter in a long time. So if you look up here, you got your objectives. You can take it out, or you can check out your primary, secondary, optionals, and bonus objectives. The map key, which is essentially like the legend. You can see your insertion point, waypoints invalid, hostage locations, enemy tagged, enemy sniper targets, all this kind of stuff. In fact, this sniper and sniper selected down here is kind of important, because if you actually look over here, you'll see them. There are 3 points where I can place the sniper, and if I place it, that's where he's selected. This allows you to essentially have a sniper covering certain sections of the map based on where you place him. And he'll kill guys for you. In fact, it's a lot like SWAT 4, which is one thing I want to say. This game is very reminiscent of SWAT 4. It does... In fact, I think this would be more of a spiritual successor of SWAT 4 than it would be a Rainbow Six game. The planning phase is a lot like Rainbow Six, and I really mean that. It's like almost identical to Rainbow Six in a lot of ways, but improved in almost every single way possible, including some more realistic aspects as well. So here's the insertion, right? I can set up waypoints like so, and you'll notice that a lot of features are actually currently missing. So if I look at the waypoint control section over here, I have only the option to delete all. So I can't delete individual waypoints. I can't select individual waypoints. None of that's available yet. It will be released in the next build. Maybe not the next build, but in the near future, in future builds. This, however, will be added in the next build. Being able to pan 3D, zooming in, and panning the entire map, which to me is like really important. It's critical. I mean, I hope they kind of make it so that you can actually like change the axis and tilt of the camera so you can zoom in on angles to get a feel for what the environment looks like. Because you can see walls are set up. It'd be kind of cool to zoom in to almost be like you're walking through the environment without actually walking through it. Because if you're familiar with Rainbow Six Raven Shield, it had a little camera down at the bottom left where you were able to click on the waypoints that were set up and look around the environment with a 3D camera, which wasn't entirely realistic because, I mean, if you really think about it, you can't really do that without actually being there in person, right? So the way they did it in this game is they have cameras set up all over the facility, and you can actually click and toggle which one you want. You can pause it so it stops, which doesn't actually pause the game. It just pauses the momentum of the camera. In the future, they're going to be adding, and I'm pretty sure it's the next build, you can change which direction it wants to turn in. And if you see enemies, you can actually tag them. Now, this is a feature that some people obviously are going to either like or dislike. Yeah, I just tagged them over there. Because it kind of takes away the aspect of being a true tactical shooter, because now they're highlighted for you to see. Now, this is obviously a game that takes place somewhat in the future. You got helmets, you got crazy body armor. Naturally, you would assume in the future, if you were able to somehow link this camera to your heads-up display, you would actually be able to see them. Kind of like the same way Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter did things, where if you had a UAV spotting an enemy, it would sync up with your HUD, indicating where that enemy was. The only thing I don't understand, though, is the fact that even if the camera pans away from the target, he is still tagged. That's something I think should change, so only if the camera's pointed in a certain direction will it keep enemies highlighted. Only whenever they're in visual range of the camera, essentially, would they remain highlighted and you can actually see them in real time when you're moving through the environment. So say I want to like stop the camera like this, keep it in this position, so any bad guys, any terrorists, any enemies in this region who are tagged will show up tagged in this area, so I'm aware of this huge open space if there's going to be anyone there that I need to take out when I'm moving around the outskirts in the hallways of this particular building. But right now, I don't think that's the case. Anyway, so they got that set up, which is really nice. Here's the bonus objective. In fact, you can change floors too, which is one thing I wanted to kind of bring up. This is very important. Because one thing I actually didn't like about Rainbow Six, Raven Shield was the planning phase. Like, I mean, I really loved it back in the day, but I mean, by today's standards, it's a little, like, messy and complicated and just unnecessary the way they have it set up. This simplifies the entire process. Like, this makes it feel like how a planning phase should. It's very, very reminiscent of Rainbow Six, but just greatly improved in all aspects. And in fact, the waypoint system isn't even 100% necessary right now because you're only controlling a squad of 4 guys. And you take command of 1, and that's it. Like, there's no real point in having a waypoint system unless you really want to plan out the direction you want to move. It makes things feel a lot easier to navigate when you have an actual plan in place with waypoints telling you where to go in terms of the actual waypoint system in game. But I mean, if you can memorize the layout without using any of them, then you'll notice that you can easily navigate the environment, complete objectives. Like, you'll memorize it like you would in real life, right? Because obviously you're not going to have objective markers, unless of course this is the future, so it makes sense. But anyway, I'm going to set up like minor waypoints here just to kind of like show an example once you're in game, how you can actually utilize your squad for that. So here's the loadout screen, which I think is really, really, really well done. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with it compared to Takedown, first of all. You can choose between your members, which are color-coded. And they all have their own little stats here. And of course, you got your weapons primary, which currently, there are only the FALs, different versions of them. The OSW has a slower firing rate. DMR has a faster firing rate, so does the I can't notice a discernible difference between the Para and the DMR, other than this one's obviously a longer barrel, so I mean, less. I mean, it might be more accurate, but obviously navigating close quarters is a little bit more difficult. It kind of doesn't make any sense how the OSW has a slower firing rate when it's got a shorter barrel, but the Para has a longer. Anyway, completely different thing, but you're able to choose the weapon. You can see the huge list of weapons that are going to be available in the future. You got secondary, which you have non-lethal options, so you have a Tase pistol, which just looks like a Glock right now. I'm not sure if they're going to change that at some point. So there are non-lethal options, because enemies can surrender and you can tie them up. This is where I was talking about. It's a lot like SWAT 4. Tactical, there's nothing yet. Armor, there's nothing yet. So I'm assuming tactical is going to be like choosing flashbangs, breaching charges, that kind of stuff. Armor, light, medium, heavy, you know, that kind of, the typical stuff you would expect. Choose a red dot, iron sights, and you can suppress the weapon itself. Suppressing the weapon causes weird audio sounds where when you're shooting, you don't even realize you are shooting because it just, the sound cues at very odd intervals. Like it's strange. You'll see once we get in game. I guess I'm going to keep unsuppressed anyway. And we'll use the iron sights to kind of, or screw it, we'll put a red dot on. Because I also have some criticisms about the current state of the iron sights and the red dot. Anyway, so let's jump in here. So here we are. You can see already at the top right corner, my sniper's ready to engage someone. So I just press T and then now he's dead, supposedly. I'm not seeing it, but I know the sniper told me he's dead, so I know that's good to go. So you can see the waypoints are indicated by these orange orbs. And if I wanted to, I can open up my menu and tell them to move to the next waypoint. And they're going to move to it like so. And there's another guy, hang on. There we go. Now he's dead. Move to the next waypoint. And you can see that they're going to just keep doing that if I keep clicking on next waypoint. Now, one of the things I wanted to complain about was this, the contextual menu. Like, something I'm not particularly fond of, because you open it and then you have to click like this, which is just not very intuitive when you're in the middle of trying to navigate the environment and worry about threats. This is something that's going to be fixed in the next update. They're adding the radial menu. I have no idea if it's going to be like a circular radial menu, like where you move like in a circular fashion like you see in most console games, or it's going to be more along the traditional line of SWAT 4 where you open it and you just move your mouse up and down and it selects whichever one you want. I mean, I personally prefer that. But anyway, we'll see, I suppose, when they actually release it. So there's all the waypoints, and now they're gone. So we consume them all. Of course, you got fall in, you got next waypoint, stacking at the door, open and clear, unlock, open and clear, breach and clear. I think these options, to make it a little bit better and to save space, would only have them show up if you're actually aiming at an object which can utilize that function. So if I'm aiming at a door that's locked and I want them to unlock it or breach it, that's the only time it should pop up, and open and clear shouldn't even be an option because obviously they can't open it. They have to unlock it and open it and then clear it, or breach it and clear it. You got open flash and clears. It's a future feature going to be coming. Same with secure the enemy. Again, a lot like SWAT. And of course, some strange glitches. Sometimes you'll see the weapons pop up in their hands properly. Right now they're holding a sidearm, but in fact they have their primaries equipped. It's, you know, pre-alpha, guys. This is all subject to change, obviously. Like, they're going to rework a lot of this. And I mean, I'm pretty impressed with the character models. Like, I think the way they look, like, futuristic, this is kind of badass armor. I mean, I'd personally love having shit like this. You'd feel pretty invincible going into a building to kill some terrorists if you were wearing shit like this with a heads-up display. One thing I want to talk about, actually, is the heads-up display initially. Because it doesn't really look like this. I turned off, you can go into the options and turn off how it normally looks, which is like this. Which a lot of people either really hate or really love. I'm somewhere in between, because it kind of adds to the fact that, okay, this looks like I'm actually wearing a visor, but at the same time, it's really, really intrusive and annoying, something I'm not particularly fond of. So scaling it back maybe down to the similar way that Star Wars Republic Commando did it, where it would only be at the bottom of your screen and maybe the top corners. That would be not too bad, so the peripherals aren't affected as much in the middle of your screen. That'd be something nice to potentially see. Anyway, so you have quick keybinds as well, which I think is like Z all the way to B, potentially, where you can have, so instead of using this menu here, it's just like, you know, you can tell them where to go. Space actually does the same thing. If you want them to move to a certain location, you can hold down space and it'll show you a little orb. Of course, if you're aiming at a wall, it'll disappear, or if you're aiming at locations they can't move to, it'll disappear. And if you let go of it, it'll move to that position. Or you can just tap it. Either one works. You have different vision modes as well. I believe you have a thermal vision, which is pretty neat. You can actually see through walls, which is kind of crazy. You can see two guys up there. However, there are jammers on some of these individuals. So some of the enemies will actually, you won't be able to see them using this, because otherwise this would be like a super overpowered ability, right? So some enemies you won't be able to detect because they have jammers. And you have a Sabre vision, which is here. I have no idea exactly what this is used for, because obviously it's like highlighting electronics, a Sabre vision, so I'm not entirely sure what that means. I guess we'll figure out in the future. And then you have normal vision. If I can turn it off. The 5 currently turns on the HUD and turns off the HUD. I guess you can do it in-game, actually. Only when you turn off the HUD, the markers, like the ammo, how much ammo you have, and the health disappears. Even though before you can kind of set it up so it doesn't. But anyway, moving through the environment, you can see the red dot is super zoomed in. And you got these tripwires, which are like lasers that you walk over and then they kind of reveal your position. You can either shoot them or take them out that way by hacking them. So we'll go ahead and set up over here. In fact, you can actually have an Opti wand as too. And the next update, which I'm pretty psyched for, is they're going to add corner sticks, so you can actually look around the corners same way you could in SWAT. So if you walk over to the door and you press O, now you're using the Opti wand. I can see there's a guy here. I think I just pulled the trigger by accident. That's kind of weird. Anyway, so you can see that there's a guy here. You can't turn it. Oh wait, no, you can. Okay, never mind. WASD turns the Opti wand. So this is really, really nice. You can see who's in the room. Except as you can see, it doesn't really center back. It's like, if I keep turning like this, I'm imagining it'll stay sideways. But anyway. Back out. And I can tell them to open and clear it. And in fact, a lot of the times when you wound them, they'll give up. So, here you go. Here's SWAT 4. It's a lot like SWAT 4, as you can see. And the animations are obviously insanely wonky. Like, this is one thing I'm not particularly fond of. Like, when it starts up, how close it is to your face works, but then all of a sudden he extends his arm, like, way out over his head, like he's hailing Hitler, and then just, just spins it around in a circle, which is, like, insanely overdone. But yeah, the other thing I'm not particularly fond of, currently right now, which I think is going to be remedied in the next update as well, is the movement speed. If you play with a 360 controller, which has minor support right now, you'll actually be able to adjust, obviously through incremental movement on your analog stick, how quickly you move. In this game, currently there's sprinting, which honestly doesn't really have a place in a CQB shooter like this because I don't really see the point in sprinting at all. Especially when you're like a tactical team moving into these environments, you don't want to really be operating in a sense that you're going to be sprinting anywhere because you're really, really focused on tight team movement to cover all potential angles. But I mean, the speed you move at right now is way too quick. Like, this is just insane. I'm not particularly fond of it, especially the crazy color scheme that goes on when you get shot like that. It's very, very, very disorienting. But yeah, I mean, you can tell that it kind of looks like the cel-shaded look. Not overdone, but it's like an interesting take on tactical shooters, and it's very colorful, you know, it's kind of what I like about it. But you can tell, like, we're just moving way too fast. Like, it feels like I'm speed running through what's supposed to be a slow tactical shooter. My next point, I guess I could say, of criticism would be the actual sights themselves. Like, this is a red dot. I'm imagining it's not magnified, yet when I zoom in, it feels insanely magnified. Like, maybe it is a magnified sight, but I mean, this seems a little bit too much. Like, the amount of zoom you get, especially when you're using iron sights. Iron sights achieves almost the exact same level of change in the FOV and zoom, which I don't think is ideal. I mean, I would rather have 3D sights, like 3D iron sights, the same way you would expect in a game like Battlefield or any other shooter, and having it so that when you're using the sight, the FOV doesn't change. It stays exactly the same, so the weapon just gets brought up. Okay. Everyone's just piling in. Where the FOV stays the same. So the weapon sight just comes into your field of vision exactly the way it is right now without obscuring too much. And in fact, the iron sights aren't even zeroed properly, so it's like another problem. Anyway. So cool things you can do is stuff like this, which reminds me a lot of SWAT. You can set them up over there, and then I can come over here. Of course, there is leaning. And one thing I always criticized about Takedown was the fact that you couldn't lean and move at the same time. That is now rectified, so now you can lean and walk simultaneously. He tried to surrender, but it was too late. And there's supposed to be a hostage in here. So we'll have them stack up on that door. And I'll move around to this side. Like, the speed I'm moving right now is ideal for when you're trying to, like, make quick entries, but when you're walking around generally trying to, like, cover all angles, it's really hard to, like, look in multiple directions, because what you essentially want to achieve when you're moving around an environment, first of all, is you want to be able to look around and observe more objects and angles than you cover moving. Like, if I'm moving too quickly and I look over here, like, I can only observe so much when I'm moving so damn quickly. Like, I want to look down that hall, okay, well, it's too fast, you know, like, I'm looking, there's only so much you can see. But if you're moving slower, then you can obviously, first of all, you have more control over your weapon, and you're able to see a lot more. Actually, we're going to go ahead and set up an Opti one so I can observe who's in this room, which I actually can't see much from this angle. So we'll just give her shit, see what happens. He's down. And this guy's down. Alright, cool. Here's the hostage. Again, a lot like SWAT, where you don't actually have to escort them out, you just simply secure them. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, honestly, a lot of people want to see the ability to escort hostages out. I personally don't care, because as far as I'm concerned, SWAT 4 did it exactly the same way as this. It made a lot of sense. As a SWAT team, you're not really trying to escort people out of a building. I mean, we're not really a SWAT team, I don't believe. I don't think we're law enforcement. But you're not really trying to escort them out. You're trying to contain the situation, keep the hostages where they are, safe and sound, while you deal with the threat. Once that's eliminated, regular police officers come into the building and secure the rest of it and do all the paperwork and what you would traditionally expect. Okay, so they should be in here. The moving feels almost too fast. And that glitched out hard. Hang on. Maybe I can fix that. There we go. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's anyone in here. I don't even think I'm in the right. Yeah, there should be a hostage in here. Alright. Have them set up there. I'm gonna go around. Maybe the next door. There's 2 doors, right? You can actually move around while the map's up, too. You can't pan the camera, obviously, but... Anyway. Have them open and clear. Or they're not going to. Okay, I don't know what they're doing. They're, like, stuck behind this door right now. The AI obviously needs work. Animations certainly need work. That's one thing that was obviously heavily criticized back when Takedown was released. Animations were abysmal. Complete joke, but... I mean, I can forgive some animations, like more static animations, like not having mocap, obviously. I can forgive it if the gameplay is solid. And for the most part, I can say this game has solid core mechanics in place. Like, obviously there's a lot of work needed on movement, shooting, feel. Why are they not doing anything? Hang on. I think they're both stuck in here. Hang on, if I push them out. There we go. That explains a lot. Both of them were stuck. Of course. Feels a lot like Tango, or Tango. Takedown Red Sabre right now with the AI kind of being like... Not really. I mean, they're obviously, they're way improved, first of all. That's one thing I can definitely say, is that, like, they will kill enemies. Like, they see someone, they will shoot the enemy faster than you will. And that's a good thing. So... They're greatly improved. See, like, they're already shooting at someone else. I don't even know. I'm probably gonna come out here and see a dead terrorist somewhere. Yeah, see, they just killed that guy. Through the window. So, I mean, rad skills, right? They know exactly what they're doing. Now, those of you subscribed to my channel are very well aware of how I criticize and talk about gunplay mechanics, the realism aspect of it. Currently, there is not very much. I'm talking about recoil. Oh snap, I got lit up right there. And the way the weapons feel when you're firing. Once I clear this floor and make sure there's no one here. Like how the sniper suddenly couldn't engage a target after he spotted. Anyway. So if I'm sitting here and I want to start firing, you'll see that the kind of has like this random recoil spread, which isn't terrible. Like, I'm fine with that because it's in a specific spot where point shooting is totally viable. But one thing I'm not particularly fond of is the way that it works here. Because my sight's on a target, you can see. Actually, hang on, I need to shoot at a wall. See where the bullet lands? But then the second round lands off of where the sight's pointed. Which is not how that works at all in real life. If the scope was actually swaying and I fired and it kicked over here and then the second shot landed and the second, you know, it was landing where the sight was actually pointed, it would make sense. But this random, like, it spreads off of the sight picture, like the aim point, just doesn't make any sense to me. Something I'm not particularly fond of either. I mean, obviously this game's in pre-alpha. A lot's gonna change. We gotta keep bringing up that point, because this is really, really, really early. Oh, that guy was surrendering. Too late. Like, there's no ragdoll physics either. Like, it's just like animations purely, which isn't terrible, because I mean, if you look, even when I'm playing the original Ghost Recon to this day, like, I think the animations for them getting shot and dying is very impressive. Like, looks really, really good. And I'm dead. Which I guess was necessary to bring up my next point. So, unlike Takedown Red Sabre, if you die, you don't take control of your next squad mates, you're just dead. So, shit again. But we're not gonna do that. We're gonna just use the red dot, or the iron sights. So you're gonna see what I'm talking about here. See that? That is insane zoom for iron sights. And the fact that they're not even, like, zeroed properly, like, the scope, it's very disorienting because you're aiming straight and you zoom in and the scope is, like, the sight is actually lower than the center of your screen. And when you fire the weapon, you'll see the bullet lands above the sight. So it's clearly not implemented correctly yet. And I just don't like the way this looks. Like, this is way too much. I mean, if the FOV should retain, it should be exactly the same. Like, whatever I set my FOV to here, using iron sights, it should be no different. Because this is, like, overkill for us, like, iron sights. I'm in a close quarter game. Like, why is there this much zoom? Like, if I was using a magnified optic, I think then, yeah, okay, that would make sense. And in fact, having picture-in-picture scopes would be very beneficial to this game, in my mind. Because, I mean, it's not too demanding. You got small environments, kind of like the way Insurgency and Red Orchestra do things. So having picture-in-picture scopes would probably be, like, a really cool thing to implement into this game. I would personally love to see something like that. No idea if they can actually attain that realistically. But I mean, this, I do not like. I really don't. Having a fire selector switch is another thing I want to talk about, because there is none currently. In a game like this, with leaning, that you have implemented, and all the core features of a tactical shooter, fire selector switch is a very big one for me. I think that should be in the game from the get-go, and I would love to personally see it implemented at some point in the future. And I guess I will close the video with the last thing I want to discuss, which is the team itself, because I talked about in the planning phase earlier how you have just, you know, the 3 guys with you. And right now I don't know if they're going to include the ability to have more than, like, 1 team of 4. So if they kind of pull a Rainbow Six where you can have up to 3 teams of 4 individuals, then yeah, I'd be totally down with that, because then having planning phases would actually be executed more efficiently. Where I know they want to have go codes on certain waypoints you can set up, so like you can have go code alpha to like enter, so you can have 2 teams set up like outside the same room on different doors with different entries, have go code alpha go, and they both breach at the same time. They plan on having that, but I mean, currently right now, it's just the 1 squad. I don't know if they're going to implement more, because that would obviously be very nice, as the waypoint system's kind of wasted on the fact that you're the only squad. Unless you want to move independently by yourself, while you send another squad to follow the waypoints that you designated. Another way of doing this, I think, would be to go the route of SWAT 4, where you have a 5-man team. I would be the lead. You would have 2 that would be red, and 2 that would be gold. Or green, or whatever color you'd want to designate them. And then you would have gold, or blue and red, I think is what SWAT 4 has. Gold represents your whole unit. When you say gold, they would all follow your orders. If you say red, only the red team would follow your orders. Blue, only blue would follow your orders. This way, you would actually be able to set up operations in such a way that you would have your waypoints laid out. You would tell red to move along those waypoints, and you would tell blue to follow you, and you would take another route. So that you don't have to set up multiple waypoints for individual teams. If they're planning on keeping the 1 team element I'm talking about, if you want to keep 1 element as your operating team, designating them in such a way, like adding an extra guy and being able to designate them as blue and red or whatever colors you decide to choose. That way you can separate them and tell them each to do their own thing, similar to SWAT, would be really cool in my mind. I think that's something that would be very beneficial to the game. Unless, of course, they want to add more teams. So you got like this 1 team, which would be alpha, and you got or green or red team, or whatever the case. Like if they really want to go the route of, say, Rainbow Six, which with the planning phase would make more sense. But if they don't, or there's constraints or whatever reason they can't, I think just adding another teammate, like I was saying, and then designating the 2 different ones would be more beneficial to the overall experience, being able to let your team do whatever you want to do. So, holy crap, we're at 39 minutes. I ran this a lot longer than I originally anticipated, but I needed to get this done. I really wanted to talk about this, because it's looking pretty good. I mean, my overall impressions of this right now, I think Sorellen is well on their way to redeeming themselves. I believe in second chances. Takedown Red Sabre was a huge disaster. I ridiculed that game, as I said many, many times throughout my YouTube videos I've released over the years, ever since the game released. And Sorellen, I wasn't talking terrible about Sorellen. I was talking terribly about their game, Takedown Red Sabre. Sorellen, they have a team of a lot of really, really prominent individuals. Christian Allen's worked on Ghost Recon in the past. He's worked on Halo Reach. He knows his shit. And things just kind of were out of his hands. Like, things were just generally, the situation, the circumstances they were under sucked. And they did the best they can with what they had, and people just generally don't care. They just see a shitty game, and therefore they assume the developers are shit. I think this is a good step in the right direction to redeeming Sabrelin and redeeming them as a company to be able to make a decent game. They can release this. If they can release this, it's on early access right now, so it's able to be purchased. I would probably recommend it for $8 to support them. I see immense potential here. I really do. The same kind of potential I see in Interstellar Marines, Ground Branch, and SWAT. There is a lot of potential in this game. It's unique. It does things all very, very similarly to SWAT 4. I would say this is more of a spiritual successor to SWAT 4 than it is SWAT 5. Or Rainbow Six. I am losing my train of thought now. But yeah, I've said that before in this video. I will say it again. It's a lot like SWAT. To me, this is like the next... It's a modern day SWAT 4. And things will definitely be improved. I mean, you got tranquilizer pistols. I currently don't have equipped. I just have a regular Glock. But yeah, a ton of potential. I'm really liking what I'm seeing. Obviously, I was criticizing a lot of aspects of it. That doesn't mean I don't like the game. I just wanted to see it succeed. And naturally, things I'm talking about are important aspects that I think would ultimately benefit the game, make it a lot better. Movement speed reduction, a faster walk, which would be like this speed, I guess, and then a walk in between the speed and like a slow walk. Sprinting, I guess you can keep it, but I mean, to me, it's not needed in a game like this. Like, you don't... It's a tactical shooter. You should be moving very slowly and methodically through the environment with your team. Your team should be very efficient, and there should be cohesion there. And single player is the main focus of this game. Forgot to address that. With co-op in the future, and then multiplayer is an afterthought. So, I mean, think about that, guys. You want a really good single player experience, this is the game that'll probably give it to you in the near future. Anyway, my name's been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today on this excruciatingly long 42-minute presentation of EPSILON. Almost forgot the name of the game for a second there. And on Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, one of those days, I will follow up with the next update that should be pretty much fixing a lot of the issues I just addressed in this video. I'll see you guys on the next one.